list here. So today we're taking up the issue of slate quarries. Actually, just a little background. I know a number of people were on the committee and have been on the committee and have, so we've sort of historically heard about slate quarries in Act 250. So it was included in the Act 250 Commission's work. And we're going to sort of just hear from some slate quarry owners and residents today to begin the conversation around slate quarries. So I don't know who's first because you've asked me to change the order. I have
Craig will be speaking.
Greg.
Craig.
So Craig Mark Crow.
The agenda online
Is updated. Okay. Well, good. Please join us.
Here?
Yes.
First, I want to thank you for your willingness to hear some comments from the slate industry regarding possible changes to Act 250. It's of vital interest to us, and so we're very pleased to have the chance to come up and give you some of our comments on everything. So I've prepared a PowerPoint presentation, which I'll run through. Shouldn't take too long.
So, excuse me, Craig, but for the record, the audio needs to know your name so people can make an identifier.
Sure.
Thank you.
My name is Craig Mark Rowe. I own and manage Vermont Structural Slate Company in Fairhaven, Vermont. Okay. So I'm sure many of you know that the slate industry is an old historic industry. My company, for example, was actually incorporated in 1866 by an act of the Vermont legislature. Back in a time when to incorporate it required a vote. And it's operated continuously ever since. Many people in our area have a personal connection to the slate industry. Perhaps their father or uncle or mother worked in the industry. Even our teams in the town of Fairhaven are known as the Slaters. The slate deposit in Vermont is relatively small and geographically defined. You can see that there's two primary active zones, which we've put in red here, which represent less than 0.2% of the area of the state of Vermont. And that's where the viable slate is located in Vermont. And so there's no risk of slate quarries emerging in other locations. The industry's had a long history, and for many years has faced competitive pressures from cheaper imitation products and also imported foreign slates. In the last 30-40 years, the pressure from foreign imports has grown tremendously. A big milestone for the industry was when asphalt shingles were invented in the early 20s. And we went from having over 5,000 people employed in our area to a steadily declining number. Now we estimate there are about 300 people who work directly for slate companies. In the last 100 years, there's been 5 slate producing regions in the country. 2 of those regions are closed. All the companies have shut down. One of them in eastern Pennsylvania, there's one company with maybe 3 or 4 people employed there operating, which we don't suspect that will go on for too long. So there's really two slate producing regions in the country. Ours, which is by far the biggest, and 2 companies in Virginia, in central Virginia. So our region is the most important slate producing region in the country. As I mentioned, the only other regions are Virginia and one small company in Pennsylvania. In the Slate Valley, which is what we call our area, there's about 20 small companies, and unlike Vermont's granite and marble quarries, Slate companies are family businesses. The marble and granite quarries are owned by large, multinational, usually publicly traded corporations. Ours are of a much different scale. The industry shares similarities with farming in that it is labor and capital intensive and greatly affected by weather and nature. Most of the operators and owners in the slate business have invested everything we have in these businesses. And frankly, not because they produce fantastic economic returns, but because it's our way of life. It's what we know, what we've done, and we consider it our heritage. Here's just a graphical representation of roofing slate production. And as you can see, it really peaked in 1903, and that steep decline in around 1920 was when asphalt shingles really came to be. So as I mentioned, we employ approximately 300 people in our area directly, and indirectly many other businesses in our area depend on business from slate companies and their employees. Almost all of our sales are out of the state or out of the country, bringing outside funds into our local economy. We pay a lot of property taxes because we own a lot of property. And we're active in our communities supporting local organizations, charities, and individuals. Our slates are among the highest quality slates in the world and are unique because of their colors. Most slates found around the world are black in color. And we have the greens and purples and reds, grays that really aren't found in too many other parts of the world. We produce mostly roofing, but also flooring, stairs, counters, wall cladding, flagging, specialty items. We can also crush slate and use it for aggregates and mulch. We're proud that our slate adorns some of the most prestigious buildings in the world, including here in Vermont, the State Office Building in Waterbury, University of Vermont, many buildings there, Rutland County Courthouse, many buildings at Middlebury College, Shelburne Museum, in Washington, the Vice President's Office, Smithsonian Museum of Modern Art in New York, Pentagon, Quincy Market, countless other jobs. We sell the material all over the country and to many foreign countries as far away as Australia. Just some quick pictures of these are roofs in various parts of the world. Some examples of flooring and custom slate. From an environmental standpoint, slate production should be encouraged, not restricted. It's a recyclable material, it's natural and beautiful. We use no chemicals in producing slate. We start with rocks and water, and that's pretty much what we have throughout the whole process. We believe slate is consistent with Vermont's image of high-quality specialty products. In the production of slate, we have low embedded energy costs, relatively low processing. Production of roofing slate is significantly less harmful to the environment than other types of roofing in terms of climate change, fossil fuel depletion, and water consumption. A Vermont slate roof typically lasts 150 years. In that period of time, asphalt shingles will be replaced probably 6 times in that same cycle. And what happens to those asphalt shingles? They get put in landfills, and they're essentially petroleum-based products. In Europe, they don't use asphalt shingles except on chicken coops and dog houses. So in our country, unfortunately, they're very popular because they're cheap, but they're cheap in the short term, not the long term. Vermont slates are frequently specified by architects because of their green qualities, offering lead points for projects. We quarry slowly, meaning we tread relatively lightly for mining. As mining goes, we have a light touch. We have one quarry that's been operating continuously since 1852, and it's less than a 10-acre footprint. It's in our interest to preserve the stone as much as possible, not shatter it and break it up. Act 30 of 1995. Back in the mid-90s, there was focus on reforming Act 250 with regard to slate companies. And after a 2-year study period, during which there were several visits to the quarries by legislators, countless meetings and negotiations and compromise, Governor Dean signed Act 30 into law in 1995. Act 30 recognizes the importance of quarries held in reserve and grants grandfather status to quarries subject to a registration process, which demonstrated a quarry's pre-existence to Act 250. It defines the terms abandonment, substantial change, and ancillary operations. Those were 3 critical terms that were the subject of much discussion. Historical data was provided in the registrations, and quarries which were successfully registered were issued a jurisdictional opinion stating the quarry's pre-existence to Act 250. Even after Act 30 was passed, slate quarries are not exempt from Act 250. So I hear a lot of talk about slate quarries being exempt from Act 250. I'm not a lawyer, but I don't see where they're exempt from Act 250 because I've had registered quarries that I've had to go through Act 250 on. So I don't believe they're
Are those quarries that were not registered?
Registered quarries.
Registered in 1995?
We had a quarry that's 100 years old. We registered in 1995. We received a jurisdictional opinion. We wanted to build a building. We had to go through Act 250. So slate quarries being exempt is a misnomer, in my opinion.
For the building, you need.
For the building, or it could happen with regard to extraction too. There was substantial change that's defined in the bill. So I guess anybody that considers slate quarries exempt, I'd like to talk to you because I don't see it that way. Act 30 does not offer grandfather status to any unregistered quarries. No unregistered quarries have reopened since '95. From the industry's point of view, an unregistered quarry is not feasible to open and therefore practically valueless to the industry. Act 30 mandates that a substantial change or a non-ancillary activity at a registered quarry triggers an Act 250 permit. This situation has occurred several times. For example, when Vermont Structural wanted to build a mill, we had to obtain a permit. Incidentally, that property had 30 abutting landowners. Not one of them objected to the project. It is important to note that actual quarries were registered, not parcels of land. So it is not possible to open a new unregistered quarry on a parcel of land in which there is a registered quarry without triggering Act 250 review. So here are the proposed changes before the committee, as far as I can tell from looking online. The first is to establish an extraction baseline for determining substantial change. The second, and the blue is the exact language from the bill. The second is to repeal provision allowing inactive quarries to be held in reserve. 3, to make quarry owners responsible for registration notices. And 4, to add registered quarries to an ANR Natural Resource Atlas. And we'll take these one by one and give you our comments. Our position in general is we respectfully disagree with 3 of the 4 changes included in the draft bill. We believe these changes are unnecessary and will place a heavy burden on the slate industry. Slate quarries are valuable legacy assets to all Vermonters. Why enact legislation that will make them far less likely to be viable? Act 30 has served the state, the public, and the industry well. Act 250 was not conceived to hamstring an historic natural resources industry. No changes should be made to Act 250 regarding slate quarries. Proposed change number 1 about establishing extraction baselines. Active quarries, by their nature, grow. That's what quarries do. As you remove material, the size of the excavation is getting larger. It's a slow process, as I mentioned. Eureka Quarry has less than a 10-acre footprint, and operation since 1852. Extraction rates increase and decrease based on market demand. Certain quarries yield certain colors, and colors come and go in fashion, and you need to be able to access a quarry that you might not have been in for 5 years because that color is demanded. Determining such a baseline is going to be difficult and confusing and uncertain. So given the slow rate of extraction, the limited amount of mineral resource, the confines of property boundaries, and the isolated registered locations of the quarries, the establishment of baselines and measurements of extraction are unnecessary. Proposed change number 2 to repeal the dormant quarries grandfather status. It's critical for us to be able to reactivate registered quarries without having to go through the Act 250 process. Quarries held in reserve are vital assets for Slate companies as well as the state of Vermont. Companies move in and out of quarries as supply and demand changes. Speed of access to a quarry is critical, as the slate from a dormant quarry may be required on short notice. Quarries held in reserve were registered, meaning in 1995, and fully documented with the District Commission and town offices. After Act 30, registered quarries pay higher property taxes, as the property was deemed more valuable. Currently, only the operation of the registered quarry is allowed. New buildings or a new quarry would come under Act 250 review. Continuing, while the process and cost of obtaining an Act 250 permit may not directly cause slate quarries to close, restrictions in the permit could make operating the quarry unfeasible. Also, parties that oppose quarry operations could make costs and restrictions prohibitive. Regulatory and legal shocks are difficult for small family businesses to survive. We are not of the scale to have in-house engineers and lawyers. The industry has been facing difficult times for several years. Repealing the provision that grants grandfather status to quarries held in reserve would vastly diminish the value of the primary financial assets of many businesses, assets that are used as collateral for bank loans. Change number 3 has to do with making quarry owners responsible for registration notices, whereby I guess quarry owner would have to notify adjacent landowners of a registration. We were obligated to copy all abutting landowners in quarry registration applications back in the mid-90s. Quarry owners were obligated to record quarry registrations in the applicable town offices, and the A&R has a database of all these registrations. I mean, from my standpoint, it's already very public, and I interpreted this as an obligation to constantly provide anybody that might move in with notice that it's a registered quarry. Seems like it should be clear enough. Proposed change number 4 about adding the quarries to the Natural Resources Atlas. We support this. We're in favor of people who are looking to buy property to know what's going on, and I suppose it will help the state be able to study the quarries and their growth. But we think it's important to have the information out there. Proposed changes to Act 250 will accomplish little. Currently, slate quarries are not exempt from Act 250 and may come under Act 250 jurisdiction. Repealing the grandfathered status of registered quarries will cost slate companies time, value, and possibly the ability to stay in business. Even if the proposed changes to Act 250 were enacted, quarries, in order to operate, would still blast, dump waste rock, make noise, use trucks, etc. I don't see how that would really change under Act 250. I mean, if they can't do those things, they can't operate at all. I don't think the goal of Act 250 is to close down the industry. The vast majority of slate companies have operated for many years with no problems. I mean, speaking for my company, we've blasted for 150 years. We've never been part of a lawsuit with blasting. We've never really had any problems with it. There are already mechanisms in place for disciplining a quarry acting irresponsibly. Additionally, an aggrieved party can turn to the judicial system. And the industry is regulated in many ways. And here's a list that I could come up with. These are the ways we're regulated. And when we have town zoning, in the state of Vermont, Act 250, labor and industry, multi-sector general permit, wastewater, direct discharge, stormwater, drinking water, groundwater, indirect discharge, national pollutant elimination system, tank permits, stormwater prevention plans, fire safety, air discharge, explosive regulations, community right to know, and we have the Army Corps of Engineers regarding wetlands, ATF regarding explosives, and MSHA for mining health and safety. We're pretty regulated for small companies. Recently, we've formed Green Mountain Slate Quarry Association. This represents the majority of the slate companies in our region. We've come together to sort of further knowledge about the slate industry. We've supported charities, scholarships, individuals. We've tried to be good neighbors and play active roles in our communities. We're looking to get along with people and not cause problems. And recently, we worked with the town of Pulteney on its zoning regulations, and I think after 18 months, we came to a pretty good resolution from both sides. Our suggestions, we think, in order to try to reduce the chance of somebody buying a property unaware about the slate industry, we think that perhaps there could be language somehow posted in the town offices or real estate agents made to be aware of, basically letting people know that this area is a historic slate producing area and there is slate activity there. We agree there should be a map made showing all registered quarries. That information should be relatively easy to do. All that data exists, and that could be, I guess, A&R. I'm not sure of all the various agencies that would want that, but certainly the towns in the Slate Valley, and that would help to illustrate where the quarries are. Real estate agents should know about it. Another thing, some people complain about the piles of waste slate, and one thing that I think the state of Vermont could do is consider using crushed slate for sub-base for roads, because that's one way to put those, to reduce those piles economically. I have a quarry in Virginia, and they do that. We've been told, because we've asked, well, why is there the movement to change Act 250 regarding slate quarries? And these are the reasons that we've been given. Some neighbors' general opposition to slate quarrying, neighbors' concerns about blasting, neighbors' concerns about slate piles, neighbors' concerns about property devaluation, a general desire to remove any perceived holes in Act 250. So we'll take them one at a time. General opposition to slate quarrying. Dissatisfaction with slate quarrying in our region is far from widespread. We are aware of a few neighbors, less than 10, probably more like 5, who are vocally opposed to the slate industry. It is only fair to consider this opposition relative to the large number of neighbors who have not been vocally opposed to the slate industry. We estimate there are at least 1,000 neighbors, and when I say neighbors, I mean abutters, quarries, who are not vocally opposed to the slate industry. But I think to some extent you have to balance, the two sides, square it up. Concerns about blasting. Almost all slate companies have been blasting for decades with no issues or complaints. Property damage from blasting the slate quarry is extremely rare. Most slate companies place seismographs in the vicinity of their blasts, and these yield negligible values. Concerns about slate piles. First of all, these are piles of stones. There are no chemicals or contaminants in these piles. We give this same stone to towns for use for fill and for lining roads, ditches, and banks. I would say at any one time there are towns in our area hauling from at least one of the quarries, which we give them the fill, helps us out, helps them out. The old cone-shaped stick piles are symbols of an historic industry. They were created by a previous method of extraction using cables. We don't do that anymore, so we don't create them high like we used to. Some people find them unattractive, others find them beautiful. They're symbols of a historic industry. As previously stated, the state of Vermont could reduce the piles by approving slate as a road subbase material for certain classes of roads. Concerns about property devaluation. This is an important one. Blame for possible devaluation of neighboring properties should not be solely attributed to quarries. At the time neighboring properties were purchased, there were either operating or dormant quarries nearby. No new quarries have opened. One of the purposes of registering quarries was to make publicly available the existence of a slate quarry and the possibility of it reopening. If asked, any quarry owner would have told a prospective purchaser of the possibility of a quarry reopening. Properties near slate quarries were purchased at discounted values because there were quarries nearby. Quarry activity was already priced into the market. It's possible some were willing to take a chance on them reopening in exchange for a discounted price. So, one of the more vocal opponents to the industry in the last few years, you can see one of the biggest quarries on the right in the entire Slate Valley. It's been going for well over 100 years. It's 2,200 feet to the house. So that quarry was operating when the house was purchased. The other two quarries, I'm not sure if they were operating or not, but they certainly were there. So to some extent, if you buy a house near train tracks, don't be surprised when there's a train going by. Concerns about property devaluation. What about the devaluation of quarry land? Forcing registered quarries to obtain Act 250 permits renders the quarries practically valueless to the industry. This could result in companies closing, which would have negative effects on local towns, businesses, as well as the state of Vermont. What about the families who have worked in these quarries for generations and have invested their entire savings in these businesses? What about the next generation of young working Vermonters wanting to work where they grew up? Desire to remove any holes in Act 250. We realize some people do not like the provisions of Act 30. Act 30 was signed into law after the legislature and Governor Dean came to realize that dormant quarries were not abandoned and were critical assets to the industry. Act 250 was never meant to hamstring a historic industry. As stated, we're not exempt from Act 250. There are many conditions which require a registered slate quarry to obtain an Act 250 permit. Any philosophical desire to remove perceived holes in Act 250 or to wrest control of the slate industry should not stand here. This is too important. The future. The Vermont slate industry has played an important economic and social role in the welfare of western Rutland County for the past 170 years. It provides 300 jobs and brings in millions of dollars annually to the state of Vermont. The state of Vermont needs a solid, diverse economy to propel it through the next 50 years. We should all be working to help this historic Vermont industry be in a position to contribute to the state's well-being in the future. There are ghost towns in Maine and Pennsylvania where slate quarries once thrived and served as the economic engines of the towns. I have visited these towns. It's a sad and depressing experience. It is not difficult to imagine towns in the Slate Valley suffering a similar fate. The town of Poultney has lost Green Mountain College and its only bank, and there are rumors of the only grocery store closing. In this town of 3,400, a very high number of houses are for sale and are delinquent in property taxes. Slate companies are deeply invested in the Slate Valley. We want to run our businesses and be good neighbors. In conclusion, we ask you to keep the status quo of Act 30, preserve viable access to important mineral resources, provide certainty and prosperity for western Rutland County, not require extraction baselines, not repeal the provision allowing inactive quarries to be held in reserve. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you. Did stay. There may be questions for
Okay.
you. I do want to say, I know you were you had about 25 minutes for each witness if I give everyone the same amount of time. So I know that you have all coordinated, but I just want to make you aware of that. So, but go ahead, Representative Borges.
Are the marble quarries in Proctor, West Rutland, Danby, are they regulated in the way that Slate quarries are? I know there are different operations there.
Different operations, yeah. I'm sure they're regulated in pretty much all the same ways.
But they're not really listed. They're in Act 250, that's the thing. You mentioned Maine and Pennsylvania as quarries that are now defunct. What was their reason, you know?
I think mainly it was demand problems and maybe some regulation, families changing, foreign imports probably the number one biggest thing.
You mentioned garbage.
Yeah, but what's happened to the quarries that have closed in Pennsylvania is they've become landfills for New York City.
All right, Representative Morgan.
Just one question. You indicated that the crushed stone is not good for all road beds. Is it because it's too soft?
It's soft. There are harder stones in Vermont, like granite.
I don't like
Yeah, and so slate is not as hard, but it's okay for, maybe not for the top dressing of roads, but for the lower subbase it can be used. If you ask someone in the granite business, they may not agree with that, but I know they do it in Virginia because we do it there.
You have crushers so that you
Yes.
make it into small size
Yes.
roads.
Yes. And I mean, we just thought that was because, I read where a lot of people don't like the looks of the slate piles. There's nothing physically, there's nothing damaging except maybe aesthetically. But if they could be used on roads, that would sure be a win-win way to get rid of the piles and do it economically.
Representative McCullough.
What's the physical, I guess I would say, surface area size of the largest? Now, you're speaking for the whole association.
Trying to, yes.
Yeah. And of the largest quarry?
I think the largest, the Eureka Quarry is one of the biggest ones. The Covino Quarry.
And Mammoth.
Mammoth. I would say, I'm going to guess none of them has a footprint larger than 10 acres.
Okay.
You guys agree with that?
That's right,
Yeah.
way.
Yeah.
Not even close.
Thumbnail works good for me.
Yeah.
And what's the size of the small, and we're talking about registered quarries.
Right.
What's the size of the smallest registered quarry?
Well, I think some of the smallest registered quarries are the size of this room. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, Representative Dolan and Morgan.
Good afternoon. Thank you for coming today. My question is about, again, just out of my own, for my own information or edification. Does New York have quarries as well for slate? I know that you had some lists, but for some reason, I thought New York too was a quarry,
Right.
had slate quarries. And I also have heard that New York has, I don't know, sustainability standards or something along those lines. Could you address those two
Well,
topics?
when I talk about the Slate Valley, we're right on the border.
Oh,
So some of it's in New York, some of it's in Vermont. The overwhelming majority of the quarries in the Slate Valley are are in Vermont. There are a few in New York, but very few. As for different standards, I'm not aware of it. Is there anything different? Yeah, go ahead.
If you-
I have a red slate cord. Oh,
if-
sorry.
That's fine, if you want to speak, just say your name and,
Steve Tarrin Brothers Slate. I have a red quarry in New York State, actually, too. And I also have a dimensional stone quarry for granite and quartzite. And at my slate quarry, I have no basic regulations, restrictions, nothing. It's been there probably 100 years. I have no permits to file, nothing. I do come under some of the same, ATF, MASHA, those restrictions, yes. We're inspected twice a year by MASHA, Mine Safety Health, things like that. So,
Representative Gordon?
No, mine wasn't important. Paul had a question.
Representative
Am I correct in believing that quarries that are in reserve status can be brought out of that status and made active at any given time?
Currently, yes.
And how often does that occur?
Often,
Often.
yes.
And when you do that, what is there something are people, or is the public aware of it, or is there any kind of a response in either local government or even regional government as to what's happening?
Right now, there's no formal process. I mean, they're registered. That's part of the registration is so they can reopen.
And do you run into any opposition once you reactivate?
I never have.
No.
Okay. What?
I don't know if I can, Sean Camara, we do have a local zoning. So if a quarry, if we have an Act 250 permit, like I've got one in Castleton, an Act 250 permit, in the town of Castleton, if you close your quarry for any more than 2 years, you have to reapply to get the town permit. So you still have to go through local zoning, just like any other Act 250 project. In any Act 250 project in the state, you have to go through local zoning. That's part of Act 250. We have to do that same thing. Because we have an Act 250 grandfathered or an Act 250 permits, which we do, does not mean it supersedes the town. You have to go through the town too, if there's zoning.
Craig, can you give me a sense of your operations? Like, what, do you adhere to hours of operation? Do you give notice before blasting? How does it work on a daily basis for you?
We had, one time, I guess in the late 90s, the town asked us, because we have one quarry that we were operating in town, and the town asked us to give notification. So for a 5-year period, every single time we were blasted, we would notify the town. And in the beginning, they set up seismographs and all that, and there never was any results. So eventually, they just said, "Don't bother."
It wasn't necessarily a sound request. It was concern.
That was concerned about blasting, ground vibration. But after a while, that didn't go on. But we do blow horns before blasting. We follow MSHA protocol, and you have to remember when we blast, it's a last resort. We're just all we're trying to do is loosen, because we're not trying to make aggregates. We're trying to make dimensional stone. So
And then what about hours of operation?
our hours are 7 to 3:30. In the summertime, we might start at 6:30, and we might even work an hour or two over at night. Sometimes we work Saturday mornings, but I can't speak for every company, but that's what we do.
And I'm guessing there's a potential conflict around trucking. Is that regulated locally?
I don't believe so. Just that's DOT, and then in the spring there are certain roads that are posted for weight limitations.
Can I have something real quick? Stephen Tarrin Brothers Slate. A lot of the quarries are outside of the village and towns, so there's not tons of neighbors around it. Our North Boltley quarry has 1 or 2 houses distance, and our South Boltley we might have 8 homes adjoining it, or 10. It's not like a quarry is in a setting and there's 40 homes right tight to it. So I think not knowing the region and seeing the area, it sounds like a quarry industry surrounded by tons of homes. And I know a couple of times we have helped neighbors. They've had questions and asked about stuff, and have been accommodating to the few people that are around the quarries. And I think if some people saw that and see it wasn't houses in a row, it'd be easier to understand how it affects it, if that makes sense.
Yes,
Just when you ask about trucking too,
I think again for the record, because you're
okay,
so far away.
Steve Tarrant Brothers Slate, like, some of your, I think you relate some of our quarry operations with like Pike or these other places that have trucks coming in and out all the time. My quarry, I haven't had a tractor trailer in there in 3 weeks taking a load of slate to deliver it to a customer.
Well, thank you, that helps.
So
the
that,
volume is much lower.
sometimes you think we're, trucks coming and going constantly. A lot of the quarries, maybe one tractor trailer load a week, maybe two on a good day. And so it's not like Pike trucks, 20, 30 coming constantly.
Representative Maureen.
I just wanted to make a comment. We think of blasting like we see on TV with a mountainside. Yours are just to loosen the slate so you can get it out with, you're not trying to blast it away or damage it.
When we're down into the usable layers of stone, we're trying to be as gentle as possible because we're just trying to preserve it.
So they're not tremendous blasts, they're just loosening
No,
blasts.
we do have some overburden blasts to get down to the good layers, but we use delays, we use techniques so that it minimizes the effects of the blast, and we're very careful because we don't want problems.
Representative Dave.
Do you quarry year round?
Yes, we do.
Not everyone.
Are there months in which you're more active than others?
Yes. Yeah, I mean, in the wintertime, even though we're trying to quarry every day, it's much slower rate. I mean, you can't get equipment started, it has to warm up. We have to actually cover the rock up so it doesn't freeze. Slate freezes, meaning when it gets below about 15 degrees, it'll freeze, and that sort of permanently alters the water molecules in the stone, and it doesn't split very well. So we have to, we get started late, and we have to cover it back up. We actually take the rock that's out of the ground and heat it in the building. So we're less productive in the wintertime, but we still have to do it in order to keep the mills busy.
How long is your optimum period?
Sorry?
How long is your optimum period in terms of, is it like from maybe April right through to November or something like that?
I'd say the slow months are probably January, February, after March.
Okay, in the interest of time, I'd like to, if Richard Hill wants to come up. Thank you.
Yep.
Mr. Marco.
Great. Chair opened up over here.
Excuse me, my name is Richard Hill. Like deja vu, it seems like I was upstairs 20 years ago doing this very same thing.
Welcome back.
Time goes by fast. Once again, my name is Richard Hill, and I represent Greenstone Slate. We're in South Pulteney. Craig did such a great job covering most of the things that I'm going to say. I'm going to jump around, so if I sound a little jumpy, it's because I'm trying not to repeat here too much. Greenstone Slate has quarries in Pulteney, in Town of Wells, and Town of Pollock. It was a business started in the 1950s by my dad. My son here is third generation, and when my grandson in the summertime comes home from college, he hates his job in the summer. He's fourth generation. We have about 60 employees, and we have 3 young non-owner managers. I feel kind of uncomfortable giving this, but it sounds like it's immodest and self-serving and kind of trivial, but we run in the slate business so many problems that people think we do things that we don't. We have a lot of it's carried over from decades ago. A lot of it, I don't know where it comes from. So I'm talking about greenstone slate. For us, the environment and our neighbors are synonymous. We look at our neighbors and see what they need and what help that we can give them, and and that is kind of how our environmental program works. We are very proactive. We're very conscious. Slate is a great product. It's going to be a greater product in the years to come because it lasts so long. There's no chemicals used in it. It's like just mentioned, asphalt slate is oil brought over from the Middle East by gigantic oil tankers. The biggest producers of, they're the 7th largest, I guess, producer of pollutants in the world.
You mean asphalt shingles?
Asphalt shingles, right. Some of the synthetic stuff is asphalt-based. They've even got more junk in them. They don't last as long. They fall off the roof. They're in the ground. They're in the landfills. And Craig did a good job of pointing that out. And so we think that slate is made with oil and water. Water and slate, no oil. And it really has a place. And if we're going to combat climate change, which I believe is happening, then it's a good product. It's a necessary product. I mean, it's not going to be used everywhere, but it should be used whenever possible. Going back to our environmental plans, which once again is tied in with our neighbors. We do a lot for our neighbors. We do everything from pull stuck trucks out and cars out of ditches. We had one of our employees that may have saved a man's life that was hurt on the side of the road. We're very conscious of our neighbors, and we try to show this the best we can. Now, we mentioned about the towns. We provide towns, if they want fill for the roads and so forth. As a matter of fact, I got a call this morning. We said, yeah, just go on up, bring your trucks up, load it up. We do charge them for some crushed stuff, but minimal. And we work with the towns. We have a good relationship with them. I think we have a good relationship with almost all of our neighbors. Act 250, I know back several years ago, was concerned with the same things you are. One's blasting, and the other is trucking. Now, trucking, we have a little bit more trucking than maybe some of the other companies, but we are very, very careful about trucking, particularly because of the fact that we don't control them. The customers send in their own trucks. So we have a lady who her job is to get a hold of these trucks before they get in the area, to advise them how to get in, on what roads are available, because a lot of roads just are fine for car traffic, but they aren't for truck traffic. We have some children in the area that are notorious for getting in the road. Call these guys coming in, tell them, these kids may be down there to watch it, where the speed signs are changed. Also, we give them warnings as to things like they like to come and stay overnight or something. They say absolutely not. No overnight staying on the Hopley town roads. And we also advise them as to the rules on idling unnecessarily. I know these are just little things and they're kind of trivial, but I think these are some of the things that we do. We hand out notices to all of this. And we, once again, try to track these trucks coming in. GPS systems that these trucking companies have are not all that accurate. And they may end up in somebody's backyard if you don't tell them where to go. That's actually happened. Now, in the blasting area, blasting is not nearly as dramatic as what it is on movies. As far as the vibration goes, I tell people this and nobody believes me, but vibration in the ground, they don't go very far. And we do the same thing. We have seismographs Anything that we think is going to be larger than a normal blast, that we set up our seismographs. We've even actually gone over into neighbors' lawns and set up seismographs there. We've never had a seismograph go off that was over the allowed limits. And the seismographs they're computerized, and they have right in them, they tell you right away whether or not your blast exceeded engineering standards. In regard to noise, this is a big deal for neighbors and everybody, and I understand why. We don't blast only on normal working hours. We don't blast on weekends. We don't blast on holidays, and we try to keep it. We had about 10 years ago, we had kind of an emergency. We had to blast on a Saturday morning or something. Other than that, that doesn't happen. We try to contact our neighbors. We got a guy who runs around to the various houses. Most of our quarries, fortunately, are maybe a quarter, half a mile away from any house. We have one quarry that's a little bit closer. He goes around and knocks on doors. We got one quarry that we know that the woman, she goes to work at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. We wait till 2:15 and fire out a shot. That's the kind of stuff that we do. We had one other incident where a woman, she was from out of the area. We didn't know that she happened to come home that weekend. We didn't find her in time. We fired a shot and it scared her. It really did. It scared her. And so there was a lot of asks for forgiveness. Also, there was thrown in a gallon of homemade maple syrup, and she was quite happy with the result. As I say, over 50 years, we've only had, I think, 2 complaints about blasting noise. One was an incident with a woman who we thought was out of town. Another one was an elderly neighbor who took afternoon naps. And that was in the latter part of his life. We actually stopped working the quarry because of him. And we thought he was too distressed by the blasting. As I say, the blasting vibrations, they can be, I'm not saying that they don't exist, but they do exist, but they don't really travel that far. And I guess that's why the courts have always held that, but there are problems, and things do go wrong. Usually when things go wrong, it's not the blasting in the ground, it's something on top of the ground that happened beforehand. The courts have, ruled absolute liability for blasting. If there's a blast and somebody's had some injury, the plaintiff doesn't have to show negligence or anything. All they got to show, blast, damage, absolute liability. We've never had a claim like that, but it's if you're a plaintiff's lawyer, it's very easy to prove. I'd like to maybe just real fast go through, we're very proactive on the environmental scene, some of the things that we have done. One of the things that we have done is that we had a complete environmental, this was back about 10 years ago, audit. We had a internationally known engineering firm come in, go through all of our works, through the buildings, through the quarries, through everything. They didn't find one violation, not one thing that they felt was circumspect. We've done things like we're very electricity conscious. We put in some electronic voltage transformer. They're booster transformers. They get their voltage up off of the Green Mountain power lines. They cut your usage. They're pretty effective. This year we went through and we replaced all of our lighting with high efficiency lighting. Some of our lighting was old, 20 years old or so. We replaced it for every building. It's all new. We've had the U.S. Army of Engineers come down. There was a complaint. It was here in this building, made in this building, about that we had dumped some stone into a wetland. We called our lawyer. Our lawyer called the Corps of Army Engineers, brought down a person from the Vermont Natural Resources. We had a field audit, field trip. We had There was no complaints. We had done absolutely nothing wrong. Some of the other things that we have done, like I say, they kind of seem trivial, but I hope they make you realize that we are proactive about environmental problems. We put in a new oil and gas refueling station, one that's above the ground. Some of our tanks used to be below the ground. Tore them all off, put new ones in. They've got the shields on them, so if they do leak, they leak in these containers above the ground. We have also bought a used waste oil furnace. They're expensive and they're very difficult to run, but it's been worthwhile. We don't have any leftover used waste oil. Springtime, it's gone for everything. And we've also gone to we've gone to the newer 3- and 4-tier engines. That's a bone of contention.
So I guess I want to just make sure we get to the other two witnesses that are from
Okay,
the industry.
all right.
And I'd actually like to ask you a question, like, why do you think that this issue's been brought to our attention? It seems like we hear about the conflicts, and I'm sure that we're hearing from well-managed Slate Quarry owners today, but help us understand why the issue's brought to our attention.
Well, it's brought mostly because, and this is going to be my next point, it's brought mostly because historically lands around quarries have always sold at a very discounted price. And a lot of people come in from out of the area, and almost all the complaints of people out of the area come in, they see this land, looks good, price is right, they buy it, and then they find out that, that there's a quarry next door. Now, I have no sympathy for some of these cases because, for example, one that I know about, maybe may even come up today, a lady was concerned about a quarry next door. I mean, but it was obvious when she bought the place, it was there. And I know that because I was brought up 2 houses away. And when we looked out our bathroom window, we looked at a quarry. We walked down to the elementary school, the West Pollitt Elementary School. We passed quarries. If we walked to church, we passed quarries. And then people say, well, I didn't know about it, or I didn't. I mean, that is, I just don't, I find that disingenuous, to be honest. There's a lot of things that, we have this registration process. All the towns down in our area have very good maps. And if a lawyer does his job and searches the title, he's going to find these registered properties. They're on these maps. On top of that, in today's world, you just flick your finger on Amazon, and you've got a picture of all your neighbors and what they've got hung on their outside clothesline, and you cannot miss that there are slate quarries around your house or any such way. But that seems to be part of the problem, and the other part of the problem is there's always been people who have been very anti-extractive industries. If you go back to some of the old newspaper articles in our area, there were articles written 100 years ago about how horrible the quarries were because they took stone out of the ground. I know some people like it and some people don't. I think I've used up my time. I would like to make just one real fast point. We are against the taking away of the concept of what is our reserves. Because what is our reserves? That's the only thing we have. And that's the only thing we have. We have to work our reserves. And does that mean that you can work the way this is structured right now, with that taken out? Does that mean that you can work the stone you see right now, but the stuff that's down a ways down, you can't, maybe 100 yards away, you can't work without a permit? Then somebody said, well, why don't you just go get a permit? Well, I thought about that, and I called our legal team, and I said, hey, what's it going to cost us to get a permit for one of these unregistered pits? And they said, oh, we can get you that with the engineering fees and everything for about $150,000. Well, if that's the case, if you take all the unregistered, or all the registered parcels in our area, that's $60 million. That's more than the industry is worth.
Of all the registered ones?
Right. If they say there's 400 registered quarries. I think that's an overstatement. I think that's a mistake. But that's in some of the, where did I see that figure?
I think we've heard that number too.
Yeah. And at $150,000 apiece, that's $60 million. That is really ridiculous. And, you know, these reserves, this is my last sentence, and I'll get up. Most of them my dad got back in the 1960s. And we've worked these quarries off and on since then, but they've never been worked every day. They've never been really active. My dad passed away. My wife and I, she went to work to borrow enough money to buy these reserves. And it seems funny, or it seems pathetic that 20 years later, after all the work that we have done, that there's the possibility that these reserves will be excised away from us or somehow their value will be diminished. Thank you.
How many reserves do you have?
We've got about 5 there, but they're all on one quarry parcel. And I think that's why there are so many of these unregistered parcels. Back when we had to register, we didn't really know, we knew that they weren't registering parcels, but they were registering quarry pits. And some of these little quarry pits got registered. As a practical matter, they probably won't ever be used.
Okay, we have a few questions. Dolan, Fordyce, and Odie.
Good afternoon. My question is about reclamation. Do you ever exhaust a pit and quarry, and then what are the actions that you take to kind of retire that pit, either through any type of reclamation?
Well, we had a meeting with the Corps of Army Engineers about this. And for a long time, they were thinking about, well, just fill the pit back in and reclaim it. But one thing we did do, and we did this at our cost in our experiment, we pumped, and it wasn't dirty water, but it was water from that was recognizably low quality into our water system. And when it came out the other end of our property, after going through all these big dumps and everything, we had it retested, we retested it then, and it was very, very high quality. So these old pits are developing huge quantities of potable water. And is it of any real need right now? It's not. But if what they say, if we get climate change, and this area in here, according to everything that I have read, it will be a drought area, like it was 10,000 years ago, then this could be very usable water. So the Corps of Army Engineers is now saying, well, maybe we ought to save all of this water because we may need it sometime. That's the best I can answer you.
The noise associated with quarrying, other than blasting, what is it, sawing?
The other ways of taking stone out?
What noise is being generated in quarrying?
Well, you have, in the mills, you have some noise from the saws and the trimmings, but that's inside and you can't really hear those. You can't hear those at any distance. So there's not an awful lot. Engines have got a lot quieter over the years. It's much quieter.
Representative Odie?
Hi. So I'm not sure if your testimony would talk about it, but for property taxes, you're paying property taxes on the value of the higher value because you're actually quarrying.
That's correct, right.
Do you have any current use for quarries?
I mean, other than for slate?
Use tax, where it be less because you're using it for quarries, like it's less for farming?
No. We pay more if it's used as a quarry. Now, they don't take all of your land and say, oh, that's all quarry land, but if you have, they do take what they consider where you're working in that area, and that's taxed at a higher rate.
Okay, one quick one, and then we have to move on.
Blasting doesn't occur on a daily basis, does it?
No. We fire we fire our shots. Some of these pits we only fire maybe twice a year. Now there may be some littler ones during the year, but our shots are fairly big, and we do it not very often.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
And now we have Beverly Tatko. Yes, please join us. I like the name of your business. For the record, let us know.
Beverly Tatko, my husband John Tatko. We are the owners of Sheldon Slate Products Company. Prior to that, there was also Tatko Brothers Slate Company, which John's uncles and his father and so forth owned and ran, and John was involved in it. They've all passed, that generation was passed. And we made a decision to close down Tatko Brothers Slate Company and merged our two companies. So there is no more Tatko Brothers Slate Company, just Sheldon Slate. And because I thought I'd be on time restraint here, I found in all my experiences, which had nothing to do with this group, we live, I'm going to type it. Let me read, may I read first what I wrote it for it, and I can read pretty fast.
Okay.
All right. You're the House Chair of the Committee on the Natural Resources, Fish and Wildlife, correct? Okay. The Chair is Representative Amy Sheldon, and all the representatives of the committee. So thank you for allowing myself and the three other owners of Slate companies your time to let us try to share details and facts that we deal with in owning and operating slate quarries and companies. Most of what I want to share with you will be about our family business, Sheldon Slate Products Company, Incorporated, owned by Beverly and John Tatko. We are incorporated in the New York State by the federal government. Our main office is located in Middle Granville, New York. We are also registered and authorized to operate our business in Vermont and Maine. We do own property and slate quarries in all three states. We do comply with all state regulations and file all necessary reports in each state. We are inspected frequently by the United States Department of Labor, MSHA, and have a very positive record. Next, I'd like to share a little of our history. My husband and I are the third generation of Tatkos to own and operate our slate business. Our company currently employs, we have two sons, John III and Peter. They are the fourth generation. And one more, we have a granddaughter, Alyssa, who is the fifth generation, and she works for me in our office. Currently, we have a total of 36 employees. Of this number, 6 females work in our plant production. 2 of them reside in Vermont, and 4 reside in New York. 18 males also work in our production plants, and I didn't break down that, but most of them live in New York State. We're right here on the border. And 8 other males are located in our quarries in Vermont. Our office employs myself, my granddaughter, and my main office female employee, who's been with us for 33 years and lives in the state of Vermont. We also employ 1 part-time female in charge of photography, creation of our literature, and graphic design. She resides in New York State. We believe that Vermont State has been gifted by nature with colored slate quarries and other deposits of beautiful natural stone, trees, mountains, lakes, rivers, and all kinds of wildlife. We also believe all of these gifts must be protected, but we also believe that we must be allowed as owners to extract our slate and to manufacture beautiful products that are a green building choice, products that are praised all over the world for their superior quality, durability, and beauty. Our main competition for our product, some of this stuff you've already heard, is imported slate from 11 other countries. Statistics in this magazine, this is where I got it from, also tell us that slate is also exported from the United States to approximately the same number of countries, but in a very small quantity. A lot of it comes over here. Scientists have explanations of how our deposits of rock formed in Vermont and a very small vein continues into New York State. We acknowledge that our ancestors and past generations who discovered the rock and figured out how to extract it, split and cut it into usable products. We should recognize and praise them as we praise Columbus for discovering America. We share your concerns to protect the environment and all of the residents, wildlife, water, and forests, and do operate our business with these in mind. This has already been talked about it, but water. And I only know what our company does. We use water in every process in manufacturing our Slate products. Because we run saws with diamond blades and so forth. However, we recycle by using the water. We recycle the water by piping it down to run down into an unused settling pond on our property. We then pump it back up to our mills and are able to continue this process daily. This does require us to check the storage hole daily and weekends. Sometimes we need to shut off the pump, depending on what the weather brings to us. We do not use any rivers or stream water. We have water discharge permits, and we are required to submit samples for testing and reports with the results are forwarded to the state. The Slate quarries that we operate have decreased from 7 to 2 that are run on a daily basis. At one time, we had 70 employees. Now we have 36. Because we can offer different colors with superior quality, we may move some of our employees and equipment to another of our quarries for a period of time. Again, we thank Vermont for earning the title of the Colored Slate Center of the World. As you can see, Vermont slate companies have and are facing some very hard times financially to continue operating. Like many types of industries, like hospitals, colleges, etc., we must all spend wisely and pinch our pennies. My last thought is as your committee looks 50 years into the future. So does our company and all businesses. We all need to survive. John and I have 2 sons, 1 daughter, 7 grandchildren, and 3 great-grandchildren. We married almost 60 years ago. That's when I became a part of the family slate company. John was raised by his parents to learn and work in the slate industry. He actually took 4 years off after high school to attend and graduate from Clarkston College. Both of our sons attended and graduated with business degrees and have returned to assist with our company. To end my story, you probably already figured out that at the age of 84, and John at 82, we won't be around for 50 years. However, we are currently both able to work every day and still have the desire to continue as long as our health and our minds allow us to. We also believe our family will take over and continue to be in the slate industry. I'm not sure about this one. I only have one last saying that gives me a smile, and I hope also you. Nothing is more overrated than natural childbirth and owning your own business. Thank you for your patience and interest in our information. Having served on many committees and boards, I live in New York State. We do, I already said that. And I've been extremely active on the school board for 23 years, on the town board for 14 years. I was supervisor of our town for almost a year, and then I had a medical problem that didn't want me to run again. But we are very involved because we live there. Also, because our business, our slate comes out of Vermont, we would be generous there also. And I have great faith that you will all make decisions for the entire population involved. And I thank you so much for letting us come. And aren't you glad there's one woman here? I pick on these guys, you know. Where are the women?
Yeah.
But, you know, I just happen to be one that married into it, and it worked out for me.
Well, thank you so much for taking the time to come.
Absolutely.
Does anyone have a
Thank you.
question for Beverly?
Thank you.
Okay, Charles Brown, is that you?
No, can I just make one statement? That came into my mind.
Charles, please come up. I guess, what's your name?
Oh, Steve Tarrant.
Yeah.
I was just going to say our blasting complaints go up to the town manager's office just before deer hunting season. Everybody sighting their rifles in.
Welcome. I'm hoping you can be expeditious, because I need to give the other witnesses who waited all day time. So,
Well, I thank you very much for having us
for the
here.
record, let us know who you are.
My name is Charles Brown. Actually, everybody calls me Charlie. I'm named after my grandfather and my great-grandfather. We lived in Castleton, my family, and Hubbardton since the Revolutionary War, on the Brown side. My grandparents, great-grandparents, on my grandmother Brown came from Wales to work the slate quarries, and my great-grandparents on my mother's side all came from Wales to work the slate quarries. My family's been very active in the town of Castleton and Hubbardton for years. We own a little over 400 acres of land. At one point in time when I was a youngster, we owned about 1,300 acres before Route 4 went through and a couple other things happened and took our land. I'm very lucky. I haven't been married quite as long, about 35 years, to a lovely woman that works right by my side every day. And we have 2 children, a son and a daughter, which I've heard over and over and over again from people in Montpelier that we want to keep young people in the city of Vermont. Our son, who's 34 years old tomorrow, he stayed and he works our quarry operation that we reopened 14 years ago. I'm kind of the youngster here of all these quarry people because we farmed it forever. But when it got to the point, and then we also have a daughter who's going to be 31 years old this year, and she goes away in the wintertime to Florida. She's a diver by trade, and she teaches it and stuff. And then she comes back and works the business with us in our farm stand and everything. We have a large farm stand, apple orchard, cider valley. If you know Whiting Valley Winery, all of their cider comes from us. Our names are actually on their cans. So we're very diversified. 15 years ago, we decided to sell all of our dairy cows because as a young person growing up and working the farm since I was 5 years old or younger, I was taught that we don't take subsidies. We're not in current use. We don't take any federal subsidies at all. We pay all our own taxes and we work 7 days a week. So we decided to sell our cows because it was getting not very feasible with milk prices. So we decided to reopen our quarries. My grandfather, who I was named after, I was lucky. He was born in 1888. He didn't die until 1969. So he taught me a tremendous amount about the state of Vermont because his grandfather's father was the one that helped win the Revolutionary War. So it was pretty neat in teaching us. And so he always told us, myself and my brothers, as we were working, that if farming ever went to heck in a handbasket, we had the quarries. We had the slate on our property, and that would be another asset. We don't have any income coming in from any outside source except for our land. We have our farm stand, we have huge vegetable gardens, sweet corn, all that. We've had that for years. The only thing we gave up was the cows. We've always had a sand pit on our farm that we sold sand to. So I had customers already that were buying from us. So when we decided to go open up the quarries, we decided to look at, it's very expensive to open a quarry. The rule of thumb is $250,000 to reopen a quarry. We had $3,000 after we sold the cows. So I said the only way we can do this is we got to recycle everything we take out of the ground. So what Craig was showing you up there about using for roads and stuff, we actually do that now. Everything that comes out of the ground, it's not good roofing slate or flagging, we crush. We have 3 natural colors, green, black, and purple. And we found out right off the bat because we hired the crushing done originally for the first 9 years. We've been 14 years, that's why I say, even though I'm 64 years old, I'm really a youngster for these guys back here. So we hired it done, so we experimented. We had to create our customer base and to get them to start using our crushed stone because everybody thinks it's too soft, it don't work, whatever. So we realized right out of the gate that if you run it through a jaw cone only, it becomes flat. Engineers don't want it because you put it together and it slides, okay, so it doesn't lock together. So we decided to go to, besides the jaw crusher, to a cone crusher along with it. So now we run it through a jaw, through a cone, and it makes everything cubical. So now our black and our green meet state specs. Okay, we put it in a half a dozen roads. Route 30, they're doing a big project. We're in the process of bidding for them now. In 14 years, we have taken our small 2 quarries and we burned up all the former stuff that was there from my great-grandfather and my grandfather when they quarried years ago. And all the new waste. So we have 0 waste on our property. When we take it off, we separate the topsoil, put it in a pile, screen it, sell it. Then the next product below that is your shale. We can dig that with an excavator without blasting it. We put that in a pile, sell that for a road base. Then we crush everything. The next stuff down until you get to your good beds of stone, which are usually anywhere from 7 to 30 feet deep, the beds of good stone. Once you get there, you can make some beautiful stone, but you got to get there first. And that's why all these slate rubbish piles are all over the place, because about 75 to 80%, you guys can clarify this, is waste that we take out of the ground. So I wanted to make sure that we used everything. Everybody that I talked to didn't think it would work, but I'm a gambler. I don't gamble, I don't buy lottery tickets, I don't do nothing like that, but I'm a gambler when it comes to land and environment and stuff like that. And I thought it would work, and it does work. So many times, we're just pinches away from meeting the state specs. And if the state of Vermont would change the specs just a whisker, I mean, that's how close it is. Every one of the people that spoke today and all the quarries could use this stuff, crush it, and it could become a market that we could ship out of the state of Vermont if we didn't have enough market here. You need a good railroad siding. Instead of trucking it with trucks, you need a good railroad siding. Since over my span of buying property and doing everything, I bought a tract of land that was next to the railroad tracks in the Castleton River. When we got ready to go in there to cut it, I found out that it was in wetlands. So it wasn't, of course, and I knew it wasn't. So I hired it done. I had them come in. The state came in, the federal government came in, said no, it's not in wetlands. Took it out of wetlands. And then the legislature up here passed a law that said it was only good for 5 years. If you didn't do something with it 5 years, you had to go back through the process again.
So I just want to make sure you're focused because you have about 5 minutes.
Right, so what I'm saying is we've been trying to set up so we can move this slate out of the state of Vermont without trucking by using rail. And I mean, there's a lot to it. We really feel very strongly that the slate industry will, if these regulations go in, we have 5 full-time employees. It said nothing like these other people, but we also have a lot of other businesses we're running. And I'd be more than welcome to have any of you come to our operation or any other. I'm sure everybody else would rather have, would like to have you come. But I felt that in this whole year, I was hoping that the study committee would contact us. We were, none of us, in a year's time that the study committee was going on, were contacted at all to look at our operation. And
Well, I can just, don't take it personally. If you looked at the list of tasks we tried to do and the
Yeah, I understand, but I
we had to
think, but
do,
I understand that.
I'm glad you're here.
But the thing of it is when you're talking about all of our livelihoods and all the money that we have taken and invested, and the hours that all of us have worked to make what we have viable and to make it successful, and then a bill comes out in the legislature that we lose it all without spending a lot of money that we don't have. It's very difficult. And we have to be so careful. To give you a quick example, in order to run this state, we have to have revenue. Okay? By us selling that crushed stone along with our blocks, okay, last year, we collected $23,000 in sales tax from the state of Vermont. The state of Vermont don't cost the state a dime to collect that money. We have to collect it. Okay? We even had a gentleman a couple of years ago, first year we were in business, Greenhorns, we got stuck for 16 grand. I called the state of Vermont and told them we got stuck. We had to pay the tax on the 16,000 even though we never got paid. So, because it was billed out. So, it's very, very important that when you're looking at what you're doing here, to make these changes, that you will allow us to speak, and you have to look at this before you make these changes to make sure that we are actually going to be treated fairly. Because our lives are at stake here, our livelihoods. I mean, not only that, if I go to the bank tomorrow and tell them that I was testifying in Montpelier and I might lose my status of my permit status that I have, I'm not sure they're going to loan me any money for the next couple of years, you know, to keep my business afloat if I need money. These crushers that I talked about that we were crushing, we ended up 4 years ago purchased crushers because it was costing us so much to hire somebody to do it. It was just a little under $900,000. Now I want to tell you, try to pass that to your wife to make sure that she would go along with you. It wasn't an easy task, but it's going to be 7 to 10 years before I'll pay them off. Okay, and I just am saying that please make sure that when you do this, that you do the right thing for everybody. And I mean everybody, even the people that are complaining. Make sure everybody gets properly done, but make sure it's done properly in the right way. And one other thing, they keep saying that we don't have permits. When it passed through the legislation in '95, not only did we have to go to Act 250, after it was passed, the bill was passed, we had to go to Act 250. And we had to submit maps of our properties with the quarries on them. Then, we also had to supply them with adjacent landowners. Them adjacent landowners, every one of them were notified. I believe that my neighbors are family. Okay, every neighbor that lives around me is family. We've been doing this for 200 years. I want to make sure that they're happy with what I'm doing, whether it be farming or whatever I'm doing. And if they need help, I'm there for them. And my family's there for them. And every one of them were notified. I also went to each one of their houses and talked to them. Not one complained. And that then got recorded with the town of Castleton and the town of Pulteney, because we are both towns, one Quarry's Pulteney, one Pulteney's Castleton, but the land butt up to each other. And I just think it's very, helpful if everybody just does the right thing for everybody. And really looks at this. Act 250 permits, I just want to say one thing.
Okay, wait. You've said that a couple times. I have to respect the other folks who've come up here today too.
I have been through Act 250 5 times, 3 times for myself and 2 for other people, and I do it myself because I couldn't afford to hire somebody, because the first time I was going to go through Act 250 it was going to be $25,000. The second time was $75,000. And I did it myself. It took me a lot longer than if I'd hired it done, but I didn't have to pay that money out. And I'm telling you, it is a task. And you have to make sure that you don't put that burden onto us. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any questions? I'd love to answer.
We really don't have time, we have to respect the
The
other
letters,
who's come up.
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. I have letters from the town of Castleton. Got copies for all of you. I also have letters from the town of Oakland. The town of Hubbardton.
I'll actually
Yeah.
take those. I'm happy to distribute
Okay.
those.
And then I have one, you guys might not care about, but I care very deeply about. The Vice President of the United States came to Vermont
Need to visit you.
in September. Okay? Now, I knew that his office was finished off with Vermont Slate. So, don't know this man from Adam, but I thought, you know what? It would be really nice to give him something from the state of Vermont, looking like. So we have plaques made up, shaped like the state of Vermont, green. And they're about this wide, about this long, it's slate plaques. And I gave him two, I went up, and the Secret Service allowed me to give them two of them. He gave them to the Vice President of the United States. The Vice President sent me a beautiful letter back, thanking me for it.
Great, all right, committee, we have 3 minutes. Quick break, and then we're gonna reconvene.
Thank you.
Address that's there on one of your letters.
Testimony
Okay, we're gonna call our meeting to order, back to order. And Lou on the phone, can you hear me? He's muted.
Barely.
Can you turn that up a little volume-wise, Jim? Yeah, try again.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can. I was just gonna ask you, because Kim is here, would it be all right with you if we heard from her first and then if she needs to go home, she can go home?
Sure.
Okay, great, thank you. Great, welcome, Kim.
Thank you.
For the record, introduce
Thank you. Yes, for the record, my name is Kimberly Gatiel. This is my husband Josh and my family. Thank you for allowing me the opportunity to speak. I'm a little intimidated. It's not something I wanted to do. Thank you. This is not something I planned on a year and a half ago when we moved to Vermont. This is the furthest thing I could have imagined. As you know, VPR and the Rutland Herald are also following these stories. It's getting more and more public attention. In a time when Vermont is attempting to bring families in, we just don't feel protected, and we feel that we don't have a right to protect our home and property. And our question is, where does the quarry operator's right to quarry supersede our right to enjoy our property with our family? I'm going to go into a couple things in the Constitution of the State of Vermont. Article 1 states that all men are born equally free and independent and have certain natural, inherent, and unalienable rights, amongst which are enjoying and defending life and liberty, acquiring, possessing, and protecting property, and pursuing and obtaining happiness and safety. Safety is the biggest issue here for my family. Every person within this state ought to find a certain remedy by having recourse to the laws for all injuries or wrongs which he may receive in his person, property, or character. He ought to obtain right and justice freely and without being obliged to purchase it, completely and without any denial, promptly and without delay, conformably to the laws. Article 7 states the government is, or ought to be, instituted for the common benefit, protection, and security of the people, nation, or community, and not for the particular advantage of any single man, family, or set of men. Article 9, every member of society hath a right to be protected in the enjoyment of life, liberty, and property. It was my dream to move to Vermont. We're from upstate New York. We love Vermont. We actually thought of moving to New Hampshire, but on our way through Vermont, it was like, wow, what a beautiful place. It was like Courier and Ives everywhere you look. I mean, it was amazing. And when Vermont put through the GMO labeling law, just little steps like that, we felt like, wow, this is a small state that does amazing things for the country. So, you know, we came here. We've been here a little over a year. My husband works remote for a company in upstate New York. He's worked there for the past 26 years. Since he was 16 years old. Gotta throw that in because I'm very proud of him for that.
And we just felt Vermont values coincided with our family's values. Vermont portrays itself as environmental, I feel. Maybe that was, I don't know, I guess, a silly notion in some instances, I feel like, but I really do. I feel like Vermont is an environmental state, and the Bible states we're to be good stewards to the land. I want to tell you, so we found this house. It had everything we were looking for. It had 12 and, I'm sorry.
What town was it?
West Paulette. Now, it had everything we were looking for. It was an old farmhouse. It needed a ton of work, but it was beautiful. Solid bones, 12 and a half acres, 50 apple trees, multiple ponds. You know, we have a beautiful garden. It was literally checked every single box on our list. It had 4 bedrooms upstairs, everything we were looking for. Creaky bones. We thought, what, you know, this is amazing. What an opportunity. And we left our family and our friends because we wanted our kids to have an amazing quality of life. And we felt like Vermont would provide that. The school is fantastic. I will not lie, when we first drove through that village and I saw the gigantic Slate Mountains, I was like, oh my goodness, I don't want to live here. This is crazy. It was intimidating, frankly. But they look to be, like, they're being reclaimed, as I'll show in the photos. There are large trees to the naked eye and to members of the community. They are inactive. I asked my real estate agent, the quarries aren't active, are they? Was told, no.
Not for 50 years.
And coincidentally, yeah, not for 50 years, he said, and that's what our neighbors. Yes. So we move in, we're enjoying ourselves. 9 months later, we hear devastation next door. We had received a notice that Green Mountain Power was going to do a solar farm next door. So we thought maybe this is what it is, but it was 8 a.m. on a Saturday morning. Nosiness got the better of me. I walked over because it was so loud right next door, and I encountered a young man on a bulldozer. I said, excuse me, is this for the solar panel, the solar farm? And he said, nope, we're quarrying the area. And I was like, oh my God. The only thing I could think to ask was, will you be blasting? Yup, that's what he said. I looked to my left, he had bulldozed right over wetlands, the trees were on the ground, tags were on the ground. I went right home, called the environmental conservation, said, I don't know what's going on over here, but there's guys that have just completely cleared the land, they're bulldozing over the wetlands. Thankfully, they got out there, they verified that yes, they had. They also noted all the other wetlands in the area. Our property is surrounded by wetlands, and that's unfortunately no coincidence. A lot of it is coming from the quarries. I'm sorry, I'm very nervous.
You don't show it.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Don't be nervous.
Thank you.
I
I was absolutely shocked. I mean, I immediately I called everybody I could think of. We're researching, who do we call? We called Act 250. They said, oh, well, slate quarries are exempt in Vermont. Well, exempt? What does that mean? They can basically do anything they want, and you know, they all were sympathetic. I'm not going to call names because I don't want to throw anyone under the bus, but everybody I spoke to understood where I was coming from. I said, wait a minute, they're 150 feet from my property. This is where my children play. They're out there every Saturday and Sunday. We couldn't enjoy our fall at all. Our entire fall, starting in mid-September, this is every single weekend from 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. It was every day, but the weekends, you know, it was including the weekends. So that was the worst thing, because you can't have a kids' party, you can't have a family cookout. What do you do? So at this point, the operator started to understand that I was stirring the waves, so to speak, and started menacing my family. He would race by our house 30 times a day. All the neighbors can affirm this. They were wondering what was going on. He stopped in front of our home. He would peel out, just trying to intimidate me. I have kids. I have pets across the road. I just was shocked. I looked at the aerial view, and it just looks like an absolute war-torn environment, what they've already done. Who in their right mind would want to live next door to something like this? I spoke with my neighbors next door, Ron and Linda. They have lived there since she was born, actually. That's been her childhood home. She said the last time that area was quarried was 50 years ago. It was before they got married, and they just celebrated their 52nd wedding anniversary. She said that all the wells in the area would dry up when they would blast. And I spoke with another neighbor across the street who confirmed the same thing. So I'm like, are you kidding me? I took this to the select board meeting. They didn't want to do anything. I said, well, what if my well is contaminated? What if my water dries up? That's a neighborly dispute, they told me. So we're to go to bat against a multi-million-dollar company and sue because the state won't protect us? The biggest thing is there was nothing about this in our deed. There's no way of knowing. As somebody coming from out of state, but even somebody living in the state, just my neighbors, they had no idea that this was something that could potentially happen. I mean, I have a petition going to try to stop this, and I haven't even made it into the center of the village. I mean, we have 15 homes right in our vicinity that will be affected by this young man. And there's over 100 homes in the village. We're on a sewer line. Where they want to quarry is right next to the old town dump. It's crazy. You know, there's a dolomite quarry, and presumably some of the issues that arose in the trailer park presumably came from blasting. They had contaminated water, their air has been contaminated. They sit 1,600 feet away from the blasting site. These guys want to, our home is 200 feet, our property is between 100 and 150 feet away. You need to be 500 feet from a residence to fire off a gun. But they can use high explosives next door to where my children are playing with no regulation. I contacted the ATF department, and they basically chuckled and said that they're exempt. I felt so, it's insulting that my family doesn't matter. And their profits are put over our lives, the enjoyment of all of us in the community. It's wrong. We have snakes there that are northern water snakes. They're rare in the state of Vermont. We have seen them on our property. We have 200 plus little brown bats in our attic. I mean, all of these, like, this is an ecosystem. It's an amazing ecosystem. We're surrounded by wetlands. I mean, it's really, that's one of the things I love the most about the property. And what is this going to do to that? It's going to destroy it, I feel, personally. But it's the water, it's the quality of life. That's our biggest fears. You know, how many were able to have a birthday party for their kids in their yards in the summertime? How can we do that when there's no set hours that they're allowed to blast, no set hours they're allowed to work? I mean, it's like you're a prisoner. I was a prisoner in my own home, and I've honestly, surprisingly enough, I've calmed down quite a bit. Because when this first started happening in September, I couldn't go outside. I mean, I'd open that door, and I would hear the devastation, and my anxiety, my heart rate would race. My anxiety would go through the roof, and it was just the complete opposite of what we came to Vermont for. I have other friends in the area, too. They actually just contacted me a week and a half ago. There was a blast so severe, I had a neighbor contact me a half mile in each direction and ask if I thought there was an earthquake, because the one had a sister up from California, and that's what she thought it was. But obviously, you know.
That wasn't next door, though. That was away.
No, that wasn't next door. That was in the back. But it was the unregulated quarries. You know, there's a Slate volcano that has popped up on Route 22. If you drive 22, and I have pictures, north to Granville, and you look to your right, I can't even imagine what those homeowners in New York must feel like. They had a beautiful mountain view. You will not believe their view now. A gigantic Slate volcano. And why? Because they can? And that's the problem. You know, nothing against Slate. This is not going to prevent them from, you know, doing their business. It's just to ensure that we have protections as homeowners, and the people even in New York have protections. You know, it's just, it's wrong.
Yeah, because you need zoning for a certain height of sign, a certain height of windmill, a certain height of a tower, but yet you could build a mountain any size you want without any permit. That was just one thing that I kind of thought of that stuck out to me. I know for zoning regulations and other permits that everything is regulated by height. I mean, a gas station sign has to be within a certain height, so.
Oh, so, you know, I was going to look for the volcano real quick. I mean, this is Warren Switch Road. This is also, I believe, Warren Switch. I mean, it's atrocious what they've done. I gotta ask, has anybody ever seen the 80s movie, Nothing But Trouble? Chevy Chase, Dan Aykroyd, John Candy. It's based on an old mining town called Valkenvania. And that's what we've dubbed our town, because it's crazy what they're allowed to get away with. They destroy. There's no reclamation plans. If you could find that volcano while I continue here. I'm going to share the story about the family in Pulteney, which some may or may not know about. Family in Pulteney, they had 2 young children. They purchased their home 9 years ago, coincidentally from the same realtor real estate agency that we purchased our home from. They were asked if there was any possibility of the quarry nearby reopening, and were told no, it would take an act of Congress to reopen that quarry, and their story was followed also in the Rutland Herald as well. Well, it seems commonplace for realtors to say what they need to make a sale, is what I seem to say. But 9 years after they moved in, lo and behold, the quarry reopened right next door to their home. They tried to file an injunction to keep them 200 feet away. Blasting caused them to lose water for 9 days. They had to change their water filter 3 times a day from all the sediment. Their foundation bowed. They had cracks that developed, and their home now has no resale value. They are in foreclosure and living with her parents in New York now. And she's a teacher. And this is wrong. Absolutely wrong. You know, we are the future of Vermont. Our kids are the future of Vermont. The families are the future. This is the past of Vermont, and it's to be respected. But we need protections. If you want people to come to this state, you have to give us some kind of recourse. I don't want to sue anybody. I just want to be protected and be able to enjoy my property. And I don't even mind if they, you know, are over there, but just not so close where my 3-year-old could fall in a bottomless pit. I mean, you put a pool up, you need a 4-foot fence around it. But yet, they can open up a gigantic bottomless pit in the ground, which is what's wrong with this exemption, because there's no limit to the depths they can dig. I mean, the more I find out about this, the more I'm like, this can't be real. How is this possible? You know, so what if my son walks through the woods and falls in that quarry? You know, there's the volcano. That's one of the pictures. There's a number of them because I took it from all different angles.
I mean, it's going to be 200 feet, 300 feet high.
My neighbor has walked to it and said you would not believe the girth of this thing. It's just gigantic. It's just absolutely obscene. Look at this. These are our neighbors in New York. You think they're happy to see this? What does that do to their home value? Well, what does it do to all of our home values? Our home is basically worthless. You know, even if we wanted to say, okay, I can't live next to this, I have to move. I'll never be able to sell my home. And knowing what I know, I wouldn't feel right not disclosing. I wouldn't. You know, it's wrong. I mean, it's a liability. And that's the thing. There's no formal disclosure in the Vermont real estate disclosures. Why? Why is this not made standard in Vermont real estate disclosures? Why is this not in the deeds of the surrounding properties? Homes change hands. 50 years is a long time. I can't even imagine if they get another 50 years, what'll happen? What's going to happen? Our town will be a ghost town because I know multiple families that will leave. They will not subject their families to this anymore. Most of them don't even, a lot of people in town have no idea what's coming, have no idea that this young man, nephew of the owner of Newmont Slate, wants to re-quarry this particular, I mean, he has no idea. Okay? Nobody has any idea. The town's not telling anybody. I mean, it's almost secrecy. And personally, I feel that maybe the town has some kind of vested interest. They're not protecting us. And I think that that's wrong. According to the Department of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, homes within a half a mile of blasting site are entitled to a pre-blast assessment of their home and a seismograph on their well. Because these quarries are exempt by the state, who is ensuring our rights to receive these? I mean, we don't have all the money to repair our home. We don't have the money to put in a new well. This is why we need these protections. It's right. It's the right thing to do. It basically handcuffs us. You know, when we first moved in, we thought we are definitely going to put in an in-ground pool. We're taking a home equity loan out, and we're doing it because our kids love to swim, and there's no pool, a public pool anywhere in the area. Thank God we waited. Thank God. I can't even imagine. I mean, what would that do? It'd destroy your $20,000 investment? It's prohibiting your neighbors from living their fullest life. I mean, it's wrong. On the Vermont.gov website, under the town of Paulette, it says, in regard to mineral extraction, the job of the town is to ensure the extraction does not reduce an area to wasteland, disrupt water tables, and result in silting, which will damage nearby homes and properties. All of this has happened in the past, and nobody is here to protect us because everybody points the fingers at the state. That's what they say. The state has this exemption, you know? It's like they don't want to deal with it. They're part of the good old boys. Years ago, quarry operators undermined the integrity of Button Falls Road in Paulette, and the whole road collapsed. Can you believe that? The whole road collapsed. It took years to fix it. Okay, our road that we use, our main access way to Granville, where we shop and everything, is a sliver. It's a sliver between two gigantic quarries. And if, in our situation, this young man is allowed to quarry, it will open up a third gigantic quarry right there. I mean, how much can the ground take? How much can the road take? I mean, I feel like it's negligence. It's negligence by the state, and it's negligence by the town to not protect us. The draft plan for the town of Paulette also says a central factor in Paulette economic development is maintaining the character of the town that makes it attractive to new residents in terms of school, its community nature, and its aesthetic. Let's be honest. People don't come here to view the slag piles. They're not beautiful. They're unsightly and they're intimidating. And you know, if this is allowed to happen right in the center of our village, who would ever want to live here? Who would ever want to buy our homes? I mean, this is our biggest investment. We moved here thinking, wow, what a great opportunity. We can fix this place up, and you know, we can maybe in the future, we'll move and make a little money on it. You know, we love our school. We're not leaving our school, but I am, you know, but personally I do. I would like more privacy, and especially now, I can't even imagine what it would be like. But I mean, our homes are basically valueless. My neighbors, Ron and Linda, they poured their foundation, and that'll be destroyed. Another neighbor told me that when 50 years ago, rocks flew through his window from the blasting. We have another neighbor, the current owners, Ron and Susan, or no, not Ron, I'm sorry, Lance and Susan. They have a Bode Foundation, and apparently, according to Ron and Linda, who've lived there their whole lives, the man that used to live there had fought and fought to get that foundation repaired because it was from the quarry owners. My father-in-law is a structural engineer. He said there is no way they can blast that close to your home and you won't have any negative effects. I mean, there's just, look at 1,600 feet away. But the pollution there at the Dolomite Quarry was due to underground tanks. And how do you know? They're next to a dump. I mean, this is a catastrophe waiting to happen. It's going to be another Bennington. I mean, if they're allowed to blast without anybody going in and saying, wait a minute, there's an old town dump here. We can't let you do this. This is crazy. These folks are on a sewer line. I mean, our whole community is on a sewer line. What if that fractures? All of our water is polluted. Where does that leave us? Water is life. Water is the most important resource. It trumps Slate. You know, Slate is not the most important resource. Our water is. And it's not even anything against Slate. I literally could never have imagined coming here and fighting a slate industry. I mean, I've never in my life even had any negative connotations or anything. No, I'm fighting to protect my rights, basically, to protect my home, exactly. You know, how often do you see a new home go up and it has a slate roof? I don't see it anymore because slate is extremely expensive. We can't even afford to fix our current roof. You know, and to be putting your community members' quality of life at risk and their children's lives at risk, essentially. I mean, this is our children. These are their lives. I don't want to be scared of my kids playing on the property. I mean, my father went back there and encountered the man that owned the property and talked to him a little bit and said, well, are you going to let the neighbors know when you blast? Oh, well, we try to, but as time goes on, we just use a horn.
I have to give you also a 5-minute warning.
Oh, okay,
We
that's
have
fine,
another
yes.
witness that we're getting, so make sure that you get
Yes,
points that you
thank
want
you.
to get across.
A 5-minute warning, or not a 5-minute, I'm sorry. A horn. My 3-year-old doesn't know what a horn means. My kids are not, you know, I mean, what if you're in the back of the property and that horn doesn't give you enough time to get up far? This is 150 feet from the property, 150 feet. Would any one of you sitting here be okay with living 150 feet next to where a company is blasting unregulated, no less? I think it's atrocious.
Well, the blasting's regulations,
the
distance isn't.
No, I mean, the blasting really, honestly, when I spoke to her, she kind of just, she didn't give me, when I contacted the ATM department, they basically didn't give me anything to go on. And that was concerning for me. And maybe you can point me in the right direction as to where I can find some you know, common sense, you know, what I can do about that. We want to know, what makes Slate so special? That marble and granite are not exempt, but Slate is. I don't understand what's so special that everybody else is regulated, and they're not. It just seems like, what's Vermont getting out of it? What are the towns getting out of it, really? I mean, because it's going to push the families out. We've discussed, we pay quite a bit of taxes. We've discussed encouraging all of our neighbors to grieve our taxes. We pay taxes on a $305,000 assessment, which is not cheap. And, you know, our house is in disrepair, and a lot of the things I could maybe possibly attribute to previous blasting. I mean, there's nail pops, things like that, some bowing going on. These are all things that are consistent with blasting. I have researched the effects of blasting quite a bit. I've spoken with my neighbors. I've spoken with another neighbor who also lives on 149 right by a quarry. She said she had the opposite effect. Whenever they would blast, her water would fly up out of her well cap. I mean, what? Like, that's how you're going to get contamination. Yes, I'm sorry. But, I'm sorry, you threw me off there.
I'm sorry, I want you to know that.
But, I support VCE's, their wording. We need to bring these up to date. I mean, it's only right to the families. I'm going to start a YouTube channel, and I'm going to record the activity outside my home every single day, and I'm going to stream it live, and I am going to say, this is what Vermont looks like. This is what my life in Vermont has turned into. You know, I want people to know, because had I known, I would never have come. I would never have left my parents and my friends, for what I thought would be better. Like, it's atrocious. I'm sorry. But this is not just for us, this is the community. I'm here for the community. My little community understands that I'm here. They support me. Like I said, we have a petition going, and I haven't even brought it to the center of the village.
We stopped after the town wouldn't do anything, so.
Well, we stopped here, but I am not going to stop. I will not stop. I will bring this everywhere I need to bring this. This is not okay. It's not okay for my kids to see this. It's not okay for my kids to lose their mother. And that's just something that Kristen Silverman said also. She said the worst thing was that it changed her as a person, dealing with these guys. It changed her as a person. I don't want that to happen to me. This has become my full-time job, researching and calling. I mean, the amount of people I've spoken with is insane. And it's taking time away from my kids. And it's not right. It's not right. I'm sorry.
Just one question.
Yes.
Representative Morgan and then
Is this an old quarry that they're reopening? Was it a quarry there in the past?
Well, yes, that's what we are. Yes. Now, to the naked eye, you would never know. I mean, it's been 50 years of growth around it, and we don't walk on our neighbor's property before you purchase a home.
Somebody had said, well, why don't you go and ask the neighbors? Who goes and talks to all their neighbors before they buy a house? Did you go to all your neighbors' houses and say, hey, what do you do with your property?
That's why it should have been in the deed. The homes change hands. It's irresponsible. I would never do this to somebody. I wouldn't feel comfortable selling my home and putting another family in this situation.
Because someone said, oh, we're going to be a good neighbor. Well, if I woke up at 7 o'clock in the morning and blasted my radio as loud as I could all day long, would you think that would be a good neighbor? I mean, I don't think that would be a good neighbor, so.
Representative Bates.
You brought up a thing here that I probably have to ask, just from one of our other experts that were talking. Can I ask a question to somebody up there? She brought something up that I wrote down about the losing the water part.
What's the question?
If it's true that when they, I don't know the right term, blasting, I guess, do they actually lose water? Do the wells dry up? Because she brought that up, and I was just curious.
Two separate neighbors told me.
Well, if it cracks the bedrock,
It wouldn't happen every time.
Blasting,
If you could say for the record.
Sean Camara, blasting helps wells.
So it doesn't dry them up?
No.
But what about the Silverman's case? They ran out of water for 9 days.
I think that we're not going to explore the geology of it's a very specific, it's going to be site-specific, is the answer. And we're going to move on. Are there any other questions for the witness? Any other questions, more questions for the witness?
How many families' homes are on the border of where the blasting is happening now?
Four properties are on the border, but across the street, that's directly touching the border. Now, across the street, there are seven houses, and then there's a church, and then there's another house opposite, and then next to us that aren't necessarily bordering the property, they border us. I mean, it's 15 homes.
15 homes
Yes.
in total. And what's the fair market value of those homes?
Well,
What is this value?
I don't know, but one study
Well, our bank assessed our home before we purchased it at 220. It was in severe disrepair. It had been converted into apartments. So that was what they had, but we're paying a tax assessment on 305.
Okay. So thank you. No, I think we really need to move on to the next witness. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
He's been very patient.
Thank you so
Thanks
much.
for coming in.
Thank you, Lou.
Around.
Thanks, Lou.
All right, Lou.
Appreciate it.
Thank you, I appreciate listening to us. Thank you.
Lou, are you with us?
Can you hear me?
Yes, I think we can hear you.
I didn't disturb you.
Do I have to scream, or can you hear me clearly like this?
I think we can hear you, and we may actually be able to turn it up a little bit more.
Okay. My name is Lou Magnani, and maybe you can tell from the name that my grandfather did not come up here with Ethan Allen. He came on a boat. Okay, so, but I have been here since 1972. I actually started working on my place in 1971. So I've been here for all of this. And listening to Craig's testimony, I gotta say that it was very good, very polished, very well done. And there's a couple of other things I could agree with him about. One is his testimony will be better than mine, and he will sound better than me. Another thing is, I like Slate. I'm not like him. I appreciate that it's here, and I'm not opposed to Slate, but I am opposed to a lot of what goes on, and a lot of what Craig said, starting out with differentiating the slate industry from marble and granite by saying that they're multinational corporation is, I don't know, what can I say? What came to my mind was, I don't think Procter Marble was a multinational corporation. They might have sold out to Onya, and there's nothing stopping anybody there who's doing slate extraction from selling out to Onya either. So that differentiation does not hold water, not to me anyway. But let me begin my blurb so I get this all in here. So the first thing I want to say is I want to implore all of you involved with this, from the state side at least, to view a hearing held in 2015 by David Dane's committee with Vermonters for a Clean Environment presenting.
Yeah.
It's on the handout.
A number of us were at that meeting.
Okay, good. So you got to see in pictures what kind of quarries were approved and what they can morph into. So it also gets into the history of the exemption, and it contradicts a lot of the testimony given today by the industry about, especially the part about what good stewards of the land most of these companies are. And I can't argue with Vermont Structural. I have no idea how they operate, or Ernie Hill. I'm sorry, that's your dad. Whichever Hill spoke. I don't know how you operate. Same with Tatco Brothers. I live near Hilltop Slate and a Camara quarries by me. So, if you...
What are we looking at?
If you look at
what is she doing? What are you doing?
Pictures on Vimeo,
The testimony requested a
Well,
flyover.
what are we looking at now? I can't square that up with what I'm hearing.
oh, I take it Annette is running a Google Earth flyover.
So she's demonstrating there's quarries in the Slate Valley. What's the point of what she's doing? I don't get it.
The point is that all the quarrying is taking place on the Vermont side, and it's not taking place on the New York side, and that was brushed over by Craig. And it's my contention that the reason the quarries haven't opened on the New York side is because there was a law passed in 1975, the Mine Land Reclamation Law of New York, and it affected every industry. It didn't differentiate between slate and marble. Any extractive industry. So that's what Annette is trying to demonstrate right now. When I'm talking about the presentation on Vimeo and the David Dean hearing, I'm talking about some other pictures, especially that were documented, what quarries have done to wetlands, filling them in. Again, I heard Craig talking about all these, the Army engineers and whoever who said what a great job that they were doing. Well, the Vimeo presentation definitely contradicts that. And Google Earth, I don't know if you're zooming in there and that or what, but can they see that there is nothing taking place, or very little taking place on the New York side of the border, and that all the quarries that are active are on the Vermont side of the border? If you're wondering,
What's that quarry there?
Why
Is that New York?
I'm making a point of that
So
is
this is their time to testify. Sorry, we just need to respect that.
Okay.
No, I'm not talking to you, Lou. I would like you to keep going. I'm encouraging people to not interrupt the person who's speaking.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so let me get back to my blurb here. Why Vermont was exempted from Act 250 for the slate is a mystery to me. And I think it was a huge mistake. And some of you who have families that have been doing this for 100 years or what, yeah, it was good for you, and it was good for your employees, and I don't dispute that it's been good for the economy in some ways. But a repeal of this exemption has been proposed more than once over the years. For the last 20 years, I heard one person talking about, like, I can't believe I'm back here 20 years later arguing. Well, this is not the first time. I remember Elizabeth Reedy, I believe she was, if I have the name right, I believe she was a representative, proposed a revocation of this a long time ago. And David Dean proposed it after our hearing. So I did want to talk about the two people who have moved here recently that Kim talked about, the Silvermans and the Gashels. They both came here for exactly the reasons that both our governor and the woman who ran against him were talking about. Drawing young families, telecommuters, into the state of Vermont. And what does that is the Vermont brand. And the Vermont brand here is extremely tarnished, as Kim made very clear, because of the lack. It isn't the fact that the quarries exist. it's how they exist, how they fail to do anything about reclamation. I did agree with Craig that it would be great, and Charlie Brown, it would be great if the state could use some of this material. That would help. But it would also help if you guys were required to do what would be called a reclamation under the New York law, and put some of that rubble back into the holes that you took it out of. When Tim was talking about driving down a road that's, you could literally stop and throw a body into a slate quarry on either side of the road. Well, it's very puzzling to me. Why isn't any of that rubble going back in the holes? But what I wanted to get out about the New York law was that, first of all, it requires a survey. I heard you talking about all these quarries that were registered on maps, and what a big problem that was. Well, the maps were hand-drawn. I've gone through Bill Burke's entire list of, and there were about 400 quarries. I think it was only on maybe 100 different sites or properties, but it is over 400 quarries, and very few of them were turned down. All you needed was a hand-drawn map showing a quarry. And when I opposed one of these quarries, John Ewing came down and looked at an old quarry that was, it wasn't really a quarry. Profundi called it a pilot hole. They were testing to see what was there. Okay, that was registered as a quarry held in reserve. Now, that quarry is part of, you couldn't distinguish that quarry, it's just part of, there were 5 of them that were grandfathered in under that 1995 law, or by 1997 actually. They had to register the quarries. And these 5 were registered in 96, 97. And now it's like one big, massive quarry. And that is on the Vimeo production, and you can see how much wetland was filled in. And I cannot imagine that the Agency of Natural Resources or even the Army Corps of Engineers had a look. So I cannot argue with what you guys claim to be doing as good stewards of the land. But what I've seen here is something entirely different. And to get to one of Kim's points about that kid racing up and down, that is not a new thing. The Vimeo hearing, again, the woman talked about how a truck actually stopped in front of their house and made a gesture at their children. It started her into the kind of emotional dilemma that Kim finds herself talking about this whole thing. So my feeling is, unless decent norms are imposed on the quarries currently operating, nothing is going to be accomplished. And in that respect, I agree with Craig, that the establishing baselines is not a way to go about it, because the baselines would be established, for one thing, by the industry. I don't know, are they going to tell you how many loads they took out of this hole or that hole? And they might, like one of the people said, we might not need purple for 5 years and then have to go back to it. So that the process of a onesie-twosie, establishing baselines and then making it incumbent on us, the neighbors, to go to Act 250 hearings and fight for our rights is unfair to us. I think, and I know this is going to cost the businesses and the state too money. This is no doubt in my mind about it. I wouldn't argue that point with them. That if you did have to comply with Act 250 standards that I have been told are being applied now to other extractive industries, yes, it's going to be more expensive and a slower process. But I know that after we held that hearing, I'm not talking about what goes on at Vermont Structural or up that way, but right around my house, I guess because I was involved in the hearing, right around here, all the tire piles got covered up with slate rubble, mounds went around the quarries, gates went up, posted signs went up, and it was like a quick and dirty, clean this area up so the average person driving through can't see what is going on. And what is going on is not what has been depicted as being great stewards of the land. I do respect the fact that all of these families, yes, they've been here for 100 years. And yes, they are very involved in their communities. And yes, they do have a lot of say in their communities. And one of the things that Craig had said was that there is no vocal or whatever kind of, nobody speaking out in opposition to the towns. Yes, of course not. Because I know a woman who did the same thing that Kim did. She went out and said to the guy, it was summertime, and they had just opened a quarry, an old, one of the registered, 95 registered quarries. They opened it up in her backyard, and it was summertime, and they were driving through at 6 o'clock in the morning whenever it got light. And they could work until it got dark, and they could blast when it got light, and they could blast when it got dark. And she went out there and said to them, could you knock it off? You know, trying to be good neighbors here and have a decent conversation. And she said the next day, they came earlier. They raced up and down in trucks. The charge that they used the next time they blasted rattled her windows to the point where she said, I am never going to open my mouth again. And you know, I've talked to her since then and tried to get her to testify, and she said, you know where I'm at with this. I'm out of it. She knows better than to confront some people who are less than fair dealing in this whole process. Again, I did want to say, I don't know how much, can you give me an idea of how I'm doing on time?
Well, we normally would be adjourned by now, but I was going to let you go till 5 o'clock, so you're running pretty tight.
Okay. So there wasn't too much talk about the economy and the benefit to the economy, so I don't want to get into it real deep, but I heard Beverly say, I believe she's right around the corner from me on the Fox Road. Opposite, is it right opposite that big old red slate quarry that used to be there? Anyway, a lot of the milling operations are in New York. And when one person was talking about, oh, I had to go through Act 250, yes, that was to build a milling operation, to create a building. Otherwise, there is nothing about opening up a new quarry that involves Act 250 for any of these 400 quarries that are registered. And it's unfair to even call them quarries because many of them, including the ones that were registered by Profundi on the property behind me, haven't been used in like 75 years. It would be like grandfathering in a cellar hole that had a 2-foot tree sitting in the center of it, and saying, "Oh yeah, well they had a house here, so you can build up a new house here." It's grandfathered in. That's it was a very, very unfair situation to allow them to register these little 15-foot holes and then turn it into a hole that's a couple of 100 yards deep and might extend for acres and acres right up to your property line. That's on that handout. I asked people to take a look at the New York State law, and one of the things that is great about it is that it requires an actual survey, and it requires setbacks from property lines and wetlands and stuff. So the industry could not do to its neighbors what it currently feels as though it's their right to do, and that is to pile rubble right up to what they consider their border, even though their border may not have been surveyed. You go through those Bill Burke documents and look at them, and by and large, they're on hand-drawn maps, on survey maps. Let me see if I got into everything that I wanted to. Other than saying I would like to see the language changed, not about pertaining to baseline, establishing baselines, and deciding on Act 250 permits based on some kind of amorphous onesie-twosie thing. I would like to see everybody in the industry come into compliance with the same kind of standards that would apply to the other extractive industries, and that is adhering to Act 250 standards, doing some land reclamation. If they can get rid of some material through the state, that would be a help. But I doubt it would be a big help, really. So, okay, I know you're all dying to get out of there, and I guess I said most of the things that I wanted to say, but I really, I beg of you to do a little research before you, like Charlie was saying, hear us, hear them, make a good decision for the state. While you're hearing us, watch that presentation in David Dean's hearing. Watch that flyover that Annette was doing and look at the New York State law and ask yourself why the quarries are all now in Vermont and not on the New York side. I wanted to say, too, somebody said Vermont is the colored slate capital of the world earlier. I forget who it was, but there used to be a sign in Granville, New York that said, "Welcome to Granville, home of the colored slate capital of the world." Now it's no longer in New York, it's in Vermont. And there's a reason for that. Please establish what that reason is, and
He's invoked my name several times.
please try to bring these people under the same kind of standards that everybody else has to work under in these industries.
Okay, Lou,
Slate is nothing special.
thank you for your input. I'm just going to check, see if there's any questions for you.
Okay, go.
Looks like we've exhausted our our capacity for the day.
Did everybody already leave?
No, we're still here, Lou,
No,
thank you.
Still here. Thank you for your testimony.
You've already gone.
And for your patience and letting Kim go first and also understanding our requirement to be on the floor today.
Okay,
All right.
so I have no questions?
There are no more questions.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry if I talked too long.
Goodbye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Goodbye.
Whatever, if you want to stay on, you can stay on. I don't know, committee, it's past our time for adjournment. Looks like there's a couple people who would like to comment. Okay.
Can I just, since you mentioned my name a few times, can I respond?
Say for the record.
Number one, Craig Markrow, Vermont Structural Slate. Number one, you demonstrated there are quarries in the Slate Valley. We appreciate that. That's what the Slate Valley looks like. There are quarries everywhere. You showed a lot of them. As to what he's saying about quarries in New York versus Vermont, that is 100% senseless. There are slate quarries in Vermont. There aren't very many because the stone's in New York. There aren't very many because the stone's not as good. That's why. If there was, we'd be there. I mean, the stone's just not workable to the same extent it is in Vermont. So I don't understand where he's going with this. There aren't quarries in New York because New York has reclamation. That's just not true. That's just flat out not true. And he mentioned something about Vermont marble, and I don't know if he was disputing what I said about them not being large foreign companies. You can look that up. That's a fact.
The company operating the Danby Quarry is R.E.D. Graniti, which is an Italian company.
And it's the quarry itself is owned by Omia.
Right, which
So-
is a Swiss company.
Right. What else? I don't know.
We're not actually going to be able to engage in a
Yeah.
conversation with you right now. I do
Yeah.
appreciate that you did
All right.
mention your name, but I think our committee needs to move on.
Just one thing?
Yeah.
This is our life. Yeah, this is our life. One thing that the gentleman said about the, excuse me, I lost my
So you are welcome to submit more testimony, and, if we take this up, we'll...
Can we come back and speak again? Is that what you're saying?
I don't really know what those opportunities are going to look like, so I don't want to promise anything right now, but you're certainly welcome to be in touch with us and submit testimony and follow our work. I'm not sure what we're going to be doing with this issue. We have to talk amongst ourselves.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming in.
We are adjourned.
I'll tell you.